Yes, y'all. It is Sunday morning. It is the bright and sunny outside. It is 7 degrees on my computer. I am the one and only, the immortal Big G. It is Sunday, and not to bear the lead, but happy Mother's Day to y'all. Happy Mother's Day. And it is Sunday where we unpack a whole bunch of things. And of course, we've got the one and only Miss Latoya Firestarter in the house to help us unpack a few things this Sunday. And if you're watching on Facebook, you might be like, man, we have a full house. Oh, yes, we do. Latoya, who we got in the house today?
I'm going to get my folks to introduce themselves, but today we have mothers and supporters of mothers in the house. So I just want to thank everybody who decided to spend their mornings with us, early morning risers, because I know it's not easy to get up early. And
Hold on, let me drop one of these for those people that are up early. It's like air horn.
Oh. She bribed us with Starbucks.
Don't say that out loud.
So I want to make space. I just want to start off with just saying thank you to the women who are here today. I'm going to get them each to introduce themselves. But before I do, I just want to say that today we're unpacking, we're talking about mothering through healing. We're unraveling layers, navigating mothers who navigate trauma, who have ancestral wounds that they're also navigating, cultural expectations and societal expectations of mothering. We are also talking about the pursuit of wholeness and the pursuit of healing, while also being professionals in a lot of spaces, while having this public stare on what our expectations should be. So today we have some mothers here, and for those who are home listening or those who will listen afterwards, you probably want to get some Kleenex or your kitchen cloth or whatever you want to use to damp your eyes. Mm-hmm. And feel free to interact with us on social media as well, drop in a shout out to our mothers. So happy Mother's Day. And I'm looking at Joy, who's sitting right across from me. So I'm going to get her to introduce herself, and then Joy can pass it along to our other guests.
Alrighty, thank you so much for this space. Life is full of choices, and I would not have chosen to be anywhere else but here to celebrate mothers with you, Latoya. My name is Joy Uhigisha, and I am a mother of 3. I am also professionally, I'm a family and mental health psychotherapist. I'm also a student. I'm pursuing my doctorate in clinical psychology. So on a day-to-day, I support humans or individuals and families to be their best versions through counseling services. I also run a non-for-profit called Family Life and Beyond, which again is another space where we support families to, to be their best individual versions through workshops, through different events, through mental health supports and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. We're going to pass it to Sam.
Amazing. Good morning. Am I close enough to the mic?
Yeah, it should be all right.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Unlike Joy, I can think of other choices I would have made. But I do love Latoya, so I'm here. And there's coffee. So I am Sam. I am a registered psychologist. I specialize, mostly my niche is really doing complex trauma and grief work. But one of the beautiful little pockets of my practice is that I am certified as a perinatal mental health provider. So I work with individuals all through pregnancy, all through postpartum, this adaptation into parenthood and what does it mean, while I try and chase my own ever elusive balance of being a mom of 2 little ones and balancing business ownership.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. I love you equally.
Thank you.
We're going to pass it to Michele.
I'm Michele Edie, and I run a not-for-profit as well called Think Meetups. We support Black professionals in the Edmonton community. I also work for the school district, and I also run a financial coaching company. I'm currently a financial counseling student, pursuing my designation to focus on supporting families with their financial coaching.
Yeah, wow. Can we sound the alarm? Okay. Perfect.
I'm with you.
Perfect.
I'm with you.
Thank you so much for being in this space with me today. And I know that the conversation on being a mother is a never-ending conversation. But with the world defining what motherhood is, what is your individual definition of motherhood? Because I find that, last year we had the Roe and Wade debate login where everybody wanted to tell us what women should do with our bodies and, what, who, how. And it's always that gaze that everybody wants to define for us who we should be. So as it relates to something that is so maternal, so nurturing for us, what is motherhood? What does it mean to be a mom?
Yeah, what a loaded question.
Right?
You just come out the gate with the heavy stuff, man. You get
Oh my
warmed
gosh,
up.
remember how you
but-
told us not to be nervous?
Deep breath, deep breath.
The first thing I think of is actually there's this like social media post where they're doing a job interview and they're telling you about all the criteria of the job and there's a 24-hour job and they mention that there's no pay and they're talking, but it's actually the role of a mother. When you say that, that's what I think of. Like, it's such a loaded, it's a loaded question, but it's also a loaded role.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not just like trying to feed children and keep them alive. You're also creating the next generation. You actually
Yes.
have to instill morals. You have to instill values. You have to instill education. You have to instill principles. It's there's so many pieces to it. It's such a loaded. I don't know.
It's funny. I was talking to my sister-in-law this morning. I called her to tell her Happy Mother's Day, and I said, I hope you're being pampered because she's back home in Jamaica. And then she said, yes, I'm being pampered. I got a call from my daughter. I got a call. My son put his arms around me and he hugged me and told me Happy Mother's Day. And my baby, she's not old enough to understand, but she said Happy Mother's Day. And it brought me back to, I attended an event yesterday where Joy hosted a Mother's Day event. And I brought my daughter there. And she said to me, Mommy, I thank you so much for being my mom. And it was so heartwarming. And in that moment, I thought to myself, if my kid thinks I'm doing a good job, if the persons who matter to me think I'm doing a good job, why does it matter what the world thinks? Who gets to define motherhood to me when my gauge, when my key indicators, in the corporate world, they talk about the KPIs, the key performance indicators. If I've already met them with the little humans that I mother until they're teenagers and they don't like us anymore, why should it matter? So I'm going to pass it to you, Sam and Joy, and see if you want to, chime in. Who defines what mothering is for you?
Okay.
I really feel like motherhood is ghetto.
Yeah.
Listen, it's all over the place.
Is it ghetto?
Yes.
You gotta. Wait. Time out. This is where like you take the thing. You can't just throw that one out there.
Honestly, yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm like, all the moms are like, yeah.
Yeah, no. So you're in the studio with Big G, and so when you say something, G's gonna be like, time out. Please, let's unpack that. Please, let's hear more about that comment.
Like nobody gives you a heads up, like what to expect. Today it's all lovey-dovey. The next minute it is you're yelling. The next minute it's really a profound experience that is life-changing. Nobody would ever describe it for you until you experience it. You have these little humans that will technically depend on you, not to just give them life, but to also nurture them through life. And they don't care whether you are tired, whether you are out of it, whether you want to do it. Like it's just all over the place. So really that's how I define motherhood.
I love
and
that.
it's also healing at the same time.
I
because
love
feel
that.
Like
I'm going to burst a secret about Sam to get her in because I know she's going to agree. So I'm going to tell you when I thought, oh my God, this woman is something else.
I have no idea what's coming.
So we shared an office space. So I rented an office space and Sam worked in the space and one day she came and we both love green and we sat in the office and we tend to bounce off each other. And she said to me, oh my God, I have something fantastic to share with you. I'm like, what? I'm waiting for it to be this elaborate thing. She says, I'm raising ducks. How come? And she's showing me the incubator. She's showing me everything to keep the ducks warm. And she's like, I have to go home after this session because I have to go check on my little ducks. And in that moment, I knew that that was the description of a mom. We will do anything for our children. And I remember following that, a few days after, there was a power outage. And she freaked out. She has to go home to save her ducks. And when they hatched, she shared it with us. So Sam, we honor that. Parenting is ghetto, but it's also a selfless kind of ghetto behaving. So you can chime in here, Sam.
It is ghetto on a wild variety of levels. That's probably also the best intro I think I've ever had to Speaking Anywhere. But yeah, I kind of want to build off what you said, Joy, because when you said, what is motherhood, Latoya, the first thing that came to mind is we're all told this like basic, no information definition of, okay, well, you're going to take care for these tiny humans. That's motherhood. But I think motherhood is so much bigger than that, and there's so many nuances that we're not told until we're actually in it. Things like how, I'm just going to go there. I'm going to say it right now, that it will break you apart. It completely and totally breaks you apart. All your priorities shift, your relationship shift, how you see yourself is different. Everything we value is different, the way we interact with the world. Man, I'm going to have levels of anxiety for the rest of my life that I never felt prior to being a mom. But the beautiful side of it is then you get to put yourself back together in this way that works for you as you're building this family.
Yeah.
And so it's the most raw and vulnerable and gross situation that we're ever going to put ourselves in, but the most beautiful and empowering and strengthening thing that we ever put ourselves through as well.
So I'm going to put a wrench in our conversation here because we're all maternal mothers, biological mothers, right? And so we have experiences that others don't have. But we also have mothers out there who have never mothered themselves, as in having biological children. And also those who are going through fertility issues or, struggling through those levels of trauma surrounding trying to have the experiences that we have, and those who have lost children. So how then do they define motherhood or being mothers in the context of not being sidelined by those who honor the biological pieces? How do we include them in these spaces or in our hearts as mothers? So do we have to biologically mother in order to be a mother?
I like this question, actually, only because for me, I struggled with infertility. I can't
That's a whole different. That's a whole.
infertility.
I mean, a lot of us struggle with that other word too. I'm pretty sure that's not the one you went to. Different meaning.
I had gotten diagnosed with PCOS, and so my children I have a stepdaughter who is 18. I have a natural daughter who is 10, and a natural daughter who is 2. Thank you. So every 8 years, clearly, I was having babies. I was dealing with a new child. But I think that when I was going through the stages of not being sure if I was going to be able to have children myself, it was emotionally wrecking. Also, at that time, though, I also had a lot of nieces and nephews. And I had the privilege of being a mother figure in that space. So when you're going through, for me personally, when I was going through it, I really leaned into people who had children. And I think we tend to lean out of people who have children when we're going through that. And then we silently deal with the problem. And that's not always the way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's okay to not, you have to recognize for yourself that I may or may not have children. And that, as a woman, it's like your whole identity is wrapped around having children. You're not even a woman if you don't have children, if you don't give birth to children. And in that season of my life, I really felt like maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know if it's going to happen for me, but I can't live just under this rock of fear. And I had to lean into other people who had children. My sister has 6 children, and my friends all had children. I was auntie and godmother every 2 seconds. It was like that 22 dresses. I was always a bridesmaid. I was always an auntie, but it was never for me. But you have to embrace the fact that if it never happens to me, what am I going to do? Am I just going to let life pass me by? And yes, it does require some therapy sometimes too, and leaning into some supports. I think that's really important, depending on how severe that struggle is for you. But I think it's really important for you to not hide under a rock and to embrace other people with children and start to have, find a way to balance, like just figure out how to normalize it for yourself.
I love that because it feeds into the narrative that are we ever going to be enough? I have biological children, but I never breastfed. Now, I had my children in Jamaica. And I remember nobody told me I wasn't going to be a milking cow. So that's the first thing, right? Nobody told me that. And then on top of that, I had idealized that I was going to have a natural delivery, whatever natural is. It was going to be a natural delivery until I had complications. So I grieve the fact that I had a cesarean section. I grieve that. And I always felt like I'm not mother enough because my kids didn't come by that bonding experience that many mothers talked about. And then on top of all of that, I never breastfed. And I did everything. But also the silent truth, don't tell my kids I told you this, was that I never wanted to breastfeed. I never wanted little things suckling on parts of me. I didn't want that. I found it very embarrassing. I didn't want to do it. So I feel like my body heard me and didn't lean into that. But when I had my second, it was worse. And I actually went through postpartum depression after my second. But I knew also that I didn't want to breastfeed. That's not something I wanted to do. But I always questioned whether or not my kids would bond with me in the same way. Would they love me? Did I shortchange them? Every time they're sick, I'm like, they didn't get any colostrum. Every time something happens, I'm like, okay, it's something that I've shortened them because my husband will tell you, I always say to him, okay, now we're in Canada. We should try again. I always have this thing in the back of my mind that I should try again. I should try again because I probably didn't do it right. So, will we ever feel like enough parents, Joy? Will we ever feel like we're enough?
Yeah, that's a very good question. But before we get into that question, I want to back up a little bit to the different, I think motherhood could mean different for different people. When you asked the first question, my head went to, okay, how am I defining motherhood personally? But you're right, there is mothers that are non-biological, like foster parents, grandmothers that are taking care of the parents, mothers that are just adopting aunties, like so many mothers, and for them, there's no biological piece to it, but rather emotional investment, that consistent presence and loving guidance for their children. So our hearts go out to them.
Yes.
Absolutely. So to your question, what was the question again?
Are we ever going to be enough? Because I meet mothers almost every day.
Yes.
And they're killing it. Sam talks about it. Michele talks about her journey. And I'm sure you have those experiences in your practice as well.
Yeah.
And even when it seems as though we are fulfilling, we always have these questions about, are we doing enough? Should we be doing more?
Yes, yes. So there's this one, I have a story to that. I like to have conversations with my kids around dinner time. And so this time I did ask them a question around if you were me, like if you were mother, is there anything that you would be doing differently, just so I can, get into their little brains? And my son, who is 15, turning 16 like in 1 month, says, Mom, you are doing an amazing job with us.
Aww.
Yeah, like we would
Where's
not
the
change.
button?
Button, but I've got the.
Yeah, that's true.
You got this.
We would not change nothing. And I, like for a minute, I actually took that in, and I'm like, he's right, right? Because you're right when you say that we feel like it's never going to be enough or it has not been enough, and we keep like, searching for what to do better and all of that. Now, there's nothing wrong with evolving and learning new ways of being present with our kids, but also I think taking a minute and appreciating what we've done, where we are at, is going to be amazing. And it's quite a personal journey. It's really a personal journey, yes.
Okay, we'll be back with more of that conversation. Yes, that was a little sizzler. Thank you, Mama. And we got some comments on the chat, don't we?
Yeah, so Danielle Brown Myrie is giving us some affirmation this morning, ladies. Said, Happy Mother's Day to all you beautiful women. Enjoy your day. She also said, we're doing an amazing job, and she knows it's not easy, but our children love us and appreciate us. So thank you for that, Danielle. And Auntie Pauline says, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. So thank you, ladies, for commenting and sharing. As we get back into our discussion, I like the fact that now we're tapping into the Facebook community and how we're getting these affirmations, because I'm of the school of thought that it takes a village to raise children. And although mothers carry a big a role and responsibility, although I had a biological mother, as this morning, as I thought of all the people that I would say thank you to, I thought about how many non-biological women have sown into me being the mom I am today. And so I wanted to take the space, if you want to honor your experiences with your moms, their influence, and also honoring non-biological mothers who have been villagers to you, and also villagers to our children as we navigate our parenting. So
Could I throw a little extra hot sauce on that? Because, well, no, it's funny.
we always love hot sauce.
A little
right?
hot sauce, yeah.
We'll
Because
always-
I was actually, when you were talking, I was like, when are we going to talk about the village mom? Right? Because the village mom is super important. And a lot of us from around this table, we come from like the Caribbean, Africa. When, the community and all that, if Miss Enid says so-and-so, you follow what Miss Enid says. Because she'll also put the lumber on you.
Yes. And you can't go home to complain.
Right, because you get another one, right?
Yeah.
Right? But have we lost that in our community? And how important is it to have that village mom, especially if you're a mom yourself and a new mom, to have that village mom do, input and pour into what you're doing?
I think let's ask Sam, because I think we come from such diverse cultural background that we have to ask Sam, do you have a village mom in your experience? You grew up here in Canada, right? Mm-hmm. So do you still have that village mom experience here in another way?
I can say I did not. No.
Okay.
I did not. I was very lucky, very blessed in the sense that I had some very strong, powerful women around me helping raise me. But I can't say it was like a village community sense.
Right.
It was just a small family unit. And so that's where we really relied on that. But I will say, I think the concept of a village mom would have been so beneficial. And I think about when I had my daughter, when I gave birth for the first time, I gave birth May of 2020. So like world shut down. I had access to nothing. It's just me and this baby at home in our bubble because my husband works away. And I can't tell you how much I was wishing for someone, some other mama to step in and be like, okay, Sam, this is how we do it. Let me show you how to get through it. Or let me just hold you for a minute so you can sob while the baby's crying. That would have been so beneficial.
I hold space for that, Sam. I'm just gonna hold space for that because as you spoke, I became emotional thinking about all the support I had. I remember my mother-in-law washing the children's clothes. I remember my aunt purchasing clothes for me and folding them. I remember my stepmother-in-law packing the suitcase and telling me all the stuff to do. I remember when there was no milk coming out, there was somebody on the phone with me to say, relax, drink this or whatever. I remember my aunt, my husband, we lived in a family home at the time, and my husband's aunt held the baby when, you know, things got a little bit shifty because my husband was going to school at the time. So all of that support, thank you for sharing that, because it brought back the memories of how much I had, but it also is like a dagger to my soul about how much I'm losing here. Because Canada is now a very individualistic space.
Yes.
And many people will wonder, why is it that, okay, we try to connect with black this and black that as black women? It's because we find that kinship. They understand. And so I always try to go into spaces that already have that cultural context to be able to offer me what I need. Because if my needs are not being met, then I am not going to be healthy for society. So Sam, we'll be your village girl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to tap into that. While we're here, Joy, you're looking around. I see you, Joy. I see you.
So I'm thinking, because when I'm hearing village, from the definition you gave it seemed like, you know, the people that were village to us when we were growing up. But I think also, just, you know, bouncing off what Sam was sharing, it's also the village that is surrounding us as we're raising our children.
Yes.
So I think it was a privilege for us growing up, having like a whole village and community around us. Like literally your neighbor would
Discipline
parent
you.
you. Like if you're like misbehaving and all of that, they will spank you, or they will,
And you had to refer to as Miss So-and-so,
yes.
Auntie So-and-so.
Yes.
Everybody's auntie.
Everybody's
Everybody's
auntie or
auntie.
Miss.
Yes.
Don't say her, but don't, like if I had children and they said Michelle, I'd be like,
Yes.
Auntie to you.
it's exactly.
Yes. So it was a privilege. However, I moved here when I was pregnant with my first baby. So that was 16 years ago. And that was one of the hardest phase of my life, because I was gonna move into a new phase of my life, yet I didn't have the village at the same time.
Wow.
So while there was community in the sense that, you know, there were people that looked like me, that cooked food from here and there, that supported in the best way that they could, but, you know, I had to wake up in the middle of the night all by myself, babies crying, go throughout the night. Nobody ever warned me that this is what is going to happen. I didn't have anybody who would like just help me. Like today, my younger sister is having her baby, and mom is able to be there with her and support her through that process, yet I didn't get that.
Yeah.
So I think it could look different for different mothers,
Exactly.
and especially moms in the diaspora, even though, yes, we have community around us and, you know, there is supports here and there, but it still feels quite individualistic and lonely sometimes.
Wow.
Yes. Well, my
Wow.
mom, funny enough, I'm born and raised in Canada, and my mom came to Canada in 1961. And at that time, the Caribbean immigration that was happening, most people just didn't have their families around. So it was, you kind of were forced to create community anyhow. So to this day, my mother passed away 11 years ago now, almost 12 years now. And to this day, my family's all in Toronto. I can still go back to Toronto and go to any one of my auntie's houses, and none of them are blood related to me. And I will always have a place. I can knock on a door and have somewhere to stay. So that community that my mom created when I was a child has sustained, that's her legacy. Like that's sustained past her even living. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that today, because I never feel like I don't have family. I have my sister is the only one living who's like closely biological. Plus I have a couple of aunts and like cousins who are actually related, but that village community is everything. And I also have like a really good friend who we've been friends since high school, and her mother and her father were practically like my second parents. And I even lived with them at one point. So funny enough, even this week, I actually met a biological family member because of that community. So my girlfriend, who we've been friends since high school, her mother called me on Wednesday morning, and she goes, honey, you know, you're probably wondering why I'm calling you at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I definitely am. She's like, I met your family. She's like, I found your family. I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, I'm at a school, I'm having some trouble. A lady walks in, she's a supply teacher, and she says, I'll help you. And I asked, what's her name? She said, it's Mrs. Edie. And she goes, she looked at her, she goes, you're my daughter's family. She's like, what? She goes, are you from Barbados? She goes, yes. And she's like, I'm gonna call her now. she's like, you're going to meet your family.
You have somebody who has a
But
back.
that woman who, when she said to her, she said, you're my daughter's family. You have to remember, she is not my biological mother, but that was the woman who stepped in as a mother figure in my life. And she has been for years. And her husband, who's now passed, was like a father figure to me as well, too. And I still never feel like I don't have my mom around because I have communities like that. She looked at her, she said, I know you're my daughter's family. And the fact that she said that is because she meant that in her heart. Like, that is the child I raised since I was 13. She may not be biologically mine, but if I tell her to sit, she's going to sit. If I tell her to stand, she's going to stand. I don't care how many children she has. That is my child. And that's a really important thing to have in our life. Like, I don't take that for granted.
Amazing. It's funny because I like the fact that we have brought in the immigrant experience. And whether or not we like it, unless we're indigenous, all of us are immigrants here at one point or the other. And I think somebody shared with me a post where somebody decolonized the concept of narcissistic parenting. In that somebody was saying, what if your immigrant mother isn't a narcissistic mother, but she is responding to pressures and struggles that being an immigrant has created in her. So her fears of you failing, her fears of how society will embrace you has become a criticism onto you that you have now labeled as narcissistic behaviors. So I just dropped that nugget there. We don't have to disrupt that. We can talk about that, unravel that, or unpack that. We can talk about that in another space. But I introduced it for us to talk about what cycles do we want to break. I'm sure that even though many of us were raised in a village as having the village component and support, and although there were positives to it, there were also negatives that many of us in our minds are saying, you know what? I will never just take a stranger's perspective over my child. I'm going to believe my child when my child comes home to tell me something. I'm not just going to, because there are biases, there are limitations to people being involved in parenting. And so what cycles do we want to break? What cycles do we want to hold on to? What values do we want to take with us into our parenting so that our inner child wounds can be healed? And then we can also ensure that we have a strong pillar in our children. Who wants to go?
So, listen, when we were talking about the village, like literally my head was spinning. But there is the pros and the cons. I was going to step in, but then you actually, yeah. So thanks for that question.
Well, hold on, Joy.
Yeah.
We'll hit that right after this.
Alrighty, yes. So while there is advantages of, having a village around you or raising your kids around a village, I truly believe that there is some, downside to it. So for me, when I look back, I feel like, yes, my parents truly loved me and they were coming from a place of care and all of that. But I feel like there was a lack of boundaries, for example. Yeah, so there was a...
Girl, speak it. Speak it. Look, girl, speak it.
So lack of boundaries. So I have friends and family that today confess to us and say, our boundaries were crossed, whether
Yeah.
that meant sexually
Yes.
or in any other way. But that was because there was no conversations with our parents.
Joy, we have to come back next week.
Yes. So even though even though it's hard to raise my kids in Canada, but at least I feel like I have that one-on-one with my
Autonomy. Yes.
with my
Yeah.
kids.
Yes.
We have these conversations. We set those boundaries because I'm not always gonna be hovering over them wherever they're gonna be going. But at least when you take the minute, when you are intentional about
Yeah.
instilling these values for them, then it allows them to just take charge of their lives.
Yes.
So there was a lack of boundaries. There is conflicting beliefs and values. So your neighbor could believe in something different, whereas your family values are different. But then
Yeah.
they almost like impose their values on you. Have you ever met the auntie on the street who wants you to behave a certain type
Yes.
of way, and they feel entitled?
Yes.
Yes.
You feel confused.
Absolutely.
Then Joy, doesn't that also lead into the question of, say, newcomers that are moms deal with that on a same idea but on a different pathway? So, like growing up in Jamaica, if you tell your mom boundaries, the boundary is a belt.
Right?
Right? Exactly, right? So, like, isn't that word, like, so then how does a new mom come into Canada
Yes.
reconcile that?
Yes.
Because in Canada, North America, that word has different meaning, different weight
Correct.
than, say, in the Caribbean, because, like I said, the boundary is the time and switch or the belt.
Yes.
Whereas here, it's different.
Yes, that is very true. So I think there's a fine line, really, between what boundaries could mean for different people. But I think, really, the way I define boundaries for myself and even for my clients and for my kids is that it's the things that are important to you. Like, how do you
Value-based.
decide? Yeah, like the decisions that you make based on the things that you value in life, the things that are priority. And for a new mom that is coming to Canada, you're right. It's going to be a process. It has been a process for me. It is the process for all the moms to know, okay, you know, where do I stop? How do I navigate this boundary and all of that? I'll let the other.
And Zoe on Facebook is agreeing with you. She said our parents didn't know what boundaries were.
They still don't.
And they still don't. Like, there's a talk that says you can't teach old dogs new tricks. And let me tell you, leave them alone.
I know.
It's funny because I took my daughter back to Jamaica, and she doesn't know what nappy is. You know, the nappy diapers. And we were talking just the other day, and I was telling her, when you go back to Jamaica, well, first, I was sharing an experience. We were laughing about something. I go back to Jamaica, big-ass woman like me, and then there are these random people who are like, you know I changed your nappy? You know I did this? You know I did that? And I was like, oh my God, my mother made all these people look at my little coochie? I'm like, are you kidding me? All these people.
I don't think you can say that
I
word.
can't say, I'm sorry. I'm like, all these people were in my nappy. What were they doing in there? So I had to reassure my daughter that she was raised by her mother and her father, and the only persons that changed her diaper would have been her grandmother or probably a random auntie. I had to reassure her of that so she wouldn't have to feel as violated as I felt. But I wanted to share that little, because it's true. It's
so
true,
true, yes,
Joy,
yes.
right?
Everyone on
it wasn't-
Facebook is dying right now.
but it wasn't intentional, right?
It wasn't,
We
yeah.
had, my mother was a single mom, so she had to get help from anybody, right? She had 3, eventually 5 children, and there was no father support. There were so many things. So I understand the feminization of poverty, but at the same time, these are the sacrifices that are born where we have to heal. We have to do our own healing, because while we understand and we can justify and we can rationalize that our parents never intended to hurt us by trying to survive, at the same time our nervous system still feels that pain, still has to vibrate through that discomfort and that lack of safety. So as we're here and we're on our final stretch, ladies, I don't want to ask a cheesy question. But I want to really own into, where do we go next? How do we create and empower our daughters or sisters or the next generation to not feel as insufficient, unsecure, unsure, immigrant mothers, as Greg pointed out, to reconcile with the fact that this is should be uncharted territory for us. We get to define what parenting is. in the safest way, not legitimizing anybody mistreating their children, but really, how do we leave that message? How do we bring ourselves into focus and inspire somebody else out there who's listening?
I love how we're all looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna call on Sam because Sam looked to the left so
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
I was gonna say, what's going on over there? You're supposed to be able to think on the spot.
I am thinking on the spot, and I'm also thinking that you're asking us the question that all of us are working on ourselves at the moment.
Why it's relevant.
Yeah, I don't know of a single mom or parent or honestly any human who isn't trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I sort myself out and be the best possible version of myself as I go forward into the future? But I think the answer that I'm landing with, and this is the one that I'm working on exploring and where I'm at in unwinding cycles that I've been in, is just, can I make room for this to not be planned out? Can I hold space for this to get messy, to make mistakes, to be good enough instead of a perfect mom?
Wow.
Can I pass that message on to my kids that, yeah, you're going to get it wrong too. And then when you do, you come back to me and I give you a hug and we figure out next steps.
So in layman translation, you're saying that it's all right to mess up
Yeah.
if you need to.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect.
No.
There is no gauge that measures your success. And if you mess up, we're here to hold your
Yeah.
hand. Okay.
And to allow all of it to change too.
Yeah.
It's okay if this is the version of me who lives right now and in 2 years life changes and I'm different.
Wow.
That's okay.
You should write a book, girl.
One day.
One day.
When I'm done with the
All
class.
right. Michelle?
It's funny because I feel very similar to what you're saying, Sam. But there's also another side to me that the performance anxiety still gets me. And I had a friend, he said something to me that I found, I wouldn't say it's profound, but it made sense. Which is, all I can do for my kids is be the best version of myself. And I was like, yeah, it's true, because it doesn't matter what I say to my children. They're not listening to what I say. They're watching. They're watching me.
That's true. That's
They're
true.
watching me, and I want to believe they're listening to me. Don't get me wrong, but I had an experience with my daughter a few days ago, actually, and I don't remember what the context of the conversation was. But she goes, "Mom, you're just so strong," and I went, "Why would you say Mom's strong?" She goes, "You're unapologetic." I'm like, "You're 10. What does unapologetic mean?" And she's like, "If you believe in something, you stand up for it. If something is wrong, you say something is wrong. If you," and she's seeing me existing in the world just as I am, and she's taking in what she sees of me, and it doesn't matter what I tell her at nighttime or whatever I tell her in the daytime. She's listening. Don't get me wrong. She's gonna pull those out of her archive. She's gonna pull those out of her pocket. But the real thing she's seeing about me is just what she is actually seeing. Is Mom a happy woman? Does she smile? Is she loving? Like, if when she was doing an assignment, she was like, "Mom, you're the most loving mom." And I'm like, you know what? I understand why she receives that, because I'm always giving my children hugs and kisses, because a physical affection was not withheld in my childhood, but it wasn't freely given. So I make it a point to make sure I'm always giving my children physical affection, like love and kisses and hugs, and letting them know, "Honey, I love you," even after I've punished them and I've had to tell them, "Hey, you've done something wrong," and I can tell they're mad at me. After I've let it set in that they know that, yes, Mom's mad at you, and yes, you did deserve the, punishment that you got. I'm not punishing you because I don't like you or I'm unhappy at this moment. I'm punishing you because I love you. I'm punishing you because I need to know that you are going to be the best version of yourself when you're older.
Yeah.
And just seeing that kind of experience with your kids, it's like, I want to be my best because that's what they're seeing.
I think you're your best. I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
So
We're
as we're about to wrap up today's session, I just want to say thank you to you, Joy and Sam and Michelle, for coming in today and being so vulnerable, and for just sharing your tokens of nuggets, but also your own narratives about mothering, but also who mothered you and the influences. So just to summarize today, to those mothering with wounds and wisdom, you are enough. To those breaking cycles, we see you. To those reparenting their inner child while nurturing others, you are all sacred. This Mother's Day, we all honor all the ways you choose to love again and again, and we hold space for that. Thank you so much for joining us on My Radio 580. I'm Latoya Reed. Alric was in the shadows today, and this was our show, Let's Unpack That with Redefine Wellness. Thank you, Big G. Over to you.
Well, I mean, before we head out, we do have Miss Laura coming in afterwards with the Latin Hour, 8 o'clock. We'll be back next Friday with the next 48, me and Special K. I'll be back Saturday with Danny with the Weekend Morning Show. And, of course, we'll be unpacking a lot more stuff next Sunday with the fire starter herself, Miss Latoya Reed. Alric will probably be behind here learning how to work the board. But, ladies, thank you for riding with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the comments on Facebook. We didn't get to mention all of them, but we see all your comments. We love you guys. Thank you so much for participating. And we're going to take you out with a little Boys to Men, a song for Mama. Happy Mother's Day to y'all. Enjoy the day. Enjoy yourselves. Kiss some babies. We'll see you again.